So, I'm really excited to introduce our speaker, David Boyle, because he's going to take us on a journey into the future. And we will be looking at how artificial intelligence and virtual reality will impact the future of our therapy practice. We'll be assessing whether it will offer us an opportunity or an inevitable change or even a threat. So, David, it's now your time.
Thank you so much. It's, as I say, lovely to see some familiar faces and also many new ones. Those of you who already know me know I'm very passionate about this topic. So today we're going to talk about the AI and virtual reality. We're going to see the real impact they're having right now in people's lives. And we're going to think about where that's going to go in the future, and then what roles you can, and I would argue should play in helping those technologies to be impactful, but also to be safe and compliant with all of the useful rules and guidance that have been developed over the years in your field. So lots of excitement, lots of things to worry about and be cautious about, lots of opportunity. And to give you a heads up, the key question I'm going to ask you at the end is what each of you is going to do after leaving this meeting. And it's totally valid to say nothing. Thanks very much. That was fun. But I'd be really curious to know what the range of different responses are. And I'll give you some suggestions for that. But the key question is going to be, what will you do leaving this presentation? Yeah, those of you know me know that my background is not in this area. My background is in working in and for brands. I've worked with politicians and pop stars. I've worked with fashion brands and retailers, video game companies, and all sorts of fun things. So why am I here today? Well, I'm here because AI in particular has been my obsession over the last year. It is magically transformative to everything I do in my career. And I've made it a habit, obsession over the last year to go out and explore other people's areas of expertise and try to find the ways in which it's useful and impactful to them as well. So from brands to AI and now into many, many different lives. Let's talk, before we even talk about AI, let's talk about some of the imperative here, like why I care about this, why I think this is interesting and important, and why I think you should as well. And that is that even if each of you are really comfortable with your business, your practice, your clients, there is a massive unmet need out there. Even if you're perfectly serving the people you work with, even if it's true, and I'm sure it's not, there's a massive unmet need out there outside of you and your colleagues. This illustrates it perfectly. Americans report a mental health crisis. Mental health is at a new low. People are seeking help. 31% describe their mental health as excellent, which is the lowest it's been by 3 points. 23% visited mental health professionals compared to 13% in 2004. It's going up and up. And if you look at other stats, so 1 in 8 people worldwide suffer from mental health disorders. And this is severely underserved because there's a scarcity of mental health professionals. There's lots of poor quality services out there. None in this Zoom call, I'm quite sure. It's unaffordable to many. And there's some social stigma attached to it for some people in some countries still. And so you end up with low treatment rates, 33% in high income places, which is a bigger number than 8%, but not close to 100. 8% in low and lower middle income countries, and 6 in 10 psychologists say they no longer have openings for new patients. So I think if you put all this together, you say, all right, there's a massive unmet need here, massive unmet need. So let's ask ourselves if these technologies can play some role in helping to serve that need. As Paula said, today we're going to talk about AI, and in particular, I'm going to focus on, within the world of AI, what's called language models. I'll tell you about that in a minute, what that means. And we're going to talk about VR, that's virtual reality. You'll have seen adverts for the Apple headset recently, popularizing it, but Facebook and Meta are into this, and many other companies as well. So AI and virtual reality are quite separate technologies. So we're going to do it one by one. We're going to start by looking at AI, and then we're going to move on to VR. By AI and by language models in particular, what I mean are computer models that are able to do loads of really interesting things, not just typing. They can read the written word. We'll talk about what that means in this field. They can speak now very, very well. It sounds like a human. In fact, they can adopt anybody's voice you would like them to adopt. They can remember vast amounts of information, more than I can, but I've got a terrible memory, so that doesn't count. More than all of you can combined easily. They can listen, they can hear the human voice and do a really good job of interpreting what people are saying. They can write, obviously, we see that, they write words. They're very thoughtful and helpful words. We'll see that in a minute. They can see images and faces and facial expressions. They can see body language, and they can see written words or notes or anything we want to show them as well. Exciting possibilities there. And they can think very, very clearly and very, very well. So language models, yes, but interesting set of collection of skills there as well. We'll explore some of those. And by virtual reality, what I mean by it is the kind of goggles you put on your face. We'll look at that later on in the presentation as well. So again, quite separate technologies. Let's start with AI, the one I've spent most of the last year working on. And as I say, at the heart of this is something called language models. And at the heart of a language model, here's how to think about it. Imagine a computer that's read the sum total of human knowledge, or a close approximation of it. Imagine it's read vast amounts of social media postings, Wikipedia, news, blogs, Amazon reviews, textbooks on every major subject you can imagine, academic papers, medical reports. Imagine an AI that's read basically all knowledge that's publicly available. And imagine an AI that can remember most of it pretty well, and that can draw the dots between disparate concepts. And then with a little bit of custom instructions that you can give to it, and a little bit of knowledge about you, when you type a prompt into a box in the basic versions, it will respond with a message that draws on all of that knowledge, all of that wisdom, all of that information, joins the dots, and gives you back a response that's very, very thoughtful, very, very useful, very, very creative, and very, very strategic. So at the heart of it, you've got some data, some instructions, and then the ability for it to react to your prompts. That's basically what these language models like ChatGPT are. And ChatGPT is one. There are many, many others. And as I say, over the last year, I've spent the year working with a very diverse range of people from a very diverse range of industries to understand practically how these things are useful to them. So Grammy Award-winning songwriters, Hollywood screenwriters, chief executives, market researchers, creative writers, and many others. The lessons for me are very similar for all these fields, and it's beautiful to hear it from the mouths of experts. You don't have to trust me, though, that these things are very impressive, because it's now very well proven. We're beyond the stage of debating whether these things are useful. They are. We're on to the stage now of saying, how can they be useful, and what are the limits of them? So whether it's Harvard Business School or University of Warwick, whether it's MIT or organizations like the Mayo Clinic or the Boston Consulting Group, so many academic studies have happened now that show these things help us to do our work in a way which is quicker and better, and where we have to do less heavy lifting, less first drafting and brainstorming. We're more productive, we're happier in our work when we use these to help us do our jobs. We're more self-confident, and we can be more analytical, strategic, creative, and persuasive if we use these things. So having one by your side and working out how to use it to help you do your job is a pretty awesome thing to do. And that's proven across a very wide range of activities, from ideation and prioritization to segmentation of audiences and writing campaign slogans and stories and all sorts of other things. So it is totally proven that they are very, very helpful. The question is how we can use them. As one study says, those using ChatGPT outperformed those who did not by a lot on every dimension, every way we've measured performance. They finished more tasks more quickly and with higher quality results. So thoroughly ready for us to dive into. But for those of you who saw some of that when I talked about it at the conference, they've come a long way since then. It feels like a short period of time away, but at the conference, the main models that were used by most people could still only handle about 4,000 these are tokens, so about 3,000 words in its memory. And models with 30,000 words were out and about. I think we talked about those a little bit. But since then, 128,000 token models, 200,000 token models, 1 million, in fact, 10 million token models are out. These models who can handle more tokens and therefore more words allow you to put vast amounts of information in and draw on it. So imagine these new models on the right-hand side, like imagine putting an hour of video in and having it watch the video, understand facial expressions, body language, and analyze that for you. Imagine the potential of that. Imagine putting 11 hours of audio in to one single model, one single prompt, and having it listen to that listen to those audio recordings and understand them and draw on them for your benefit. Imagine putting up to 700,000 words into that model. You could take your entire diary, if you type your diary up, your entire life diary, and put it into a single prompt and ask it to find themes or lessons or give you advice. So that was not, none of those things were possible when we talked back at the conference. They're now available to the public. So they're coming in an incredible way. And if we find limitations today, they will likely not be strong limitations tomorrow. The way to think about these language models, these AIs, is that they're electric bikes for your mind, whether you think through the lens of yourself doing your job or through the lens of your clients. They're electric bikes for your mind. And by that, I mean, they allow you to, in your mind, go further, travel further intellectual distances, solve problems or think more quickly, or climb more intellectual hills. But you very much are in control. It's very much you driving these things. You still have to set the direction, pedal these bikes, navigate and park. Like you're in charge of where you start, where you stop, and how you go on that journey. They're very helpful on the journey, but they're not self-driving cars. They're not autonomous agents. They're not free thinking. The user is very much in control still at this stage anyway. And they're very helpful, not just in the kind of work I do, but just in the kind of areas, those academic studies. There's limited, but every day more and more studies in kind of medical and psychological fields. Here's one that's particularly useful, I think, to give us a sense of their abilities to understand the kind of topics that we might care about on this call. So identifying cognitive distortions, that's maladaptive negative thoughts, a crucial part of therapy, so I'm told, to break negative thought patterns. And in this one, they used AI to analyze patients' speech patterns, to separate subjective thoughts from objective facts, elicit reasoning processes that supported or opposed those thoughts, and to summarize underlying thought schemas. When you use AI to help you to do that as a professional, it improves the efficiency and the effectiveness of professional psychotherapy by providing these detailed, interpretable, that's important, rationales for these cognitive distortions, which in the study, and I would argue in real life, are appropriately then validated by human experts. So these things can understand nuance, they can understand some of the subtleties that are important in your work. And importantly and rightly, the paper also discussed the challenges of AI in psychotherapy, including safety, robustness, ethical considerations. And the paper, and my view matches this, is that AI should complement and not replace human professionals in therapy. So we're going to carry that thought through today as well. This is true today. Is this going to be true with tomorrow's wave of AIs? Don't know. And is this going to be the way people use them, or are they going to go and use them by themselves? Don't know. But they should complement professionals. That's clear to me. Question for you: how can we make that happen, or encourage that to happen, or help that to happen? And this stuff is so well proven in so many fields. Rob Garlick, who's the head of innovation, technology, and the future of work at Citi, one of the major investment banks, said this. He said, in the future, it might be unethical for a doctor not to have an AI assistant. If these things are so good at helping you, the choice to not have one might be professional negligence. So stop and think about that for a minute. And might that one day potentially form part of your professional development and codes of conduct and ethical guidelines? What would it even look like? Interesting thought. So at the conference, we talked about two different uses of AI. We talked about AI in how it can help you as a therapist to do your job, to do your notes or your letters or your planning or your strategizing or organizing your business, or helping you to research trends and understand professional issues or read academic papers. All those things are wonderful and important, and I would urge you to adopt it for all of those reasons. Lots of what I've talked about already is kind of on that topic, actually. And so that's very important. I'm not going to go over that again today. We're going to talk today just about the other use of AI, which is how can it help your clients? How can it help them by complementing what you do? And how can it play that role? And what for VR will do the same thing. So at the end of the conference, we came up with this one pager. I'm going to walk through this as a summary of the big themes as they stand in my mind relating to AI. So AIs have read, understood, and can recall vastly more than any of us ever will in our entire lifetimes. And in fact, they all have read, understood, and can recall more than all of us combined in all of our lifetimes combined. So they're winning on that front. They certainly can join the dots in new, innovative situations that they've never seen before. Certainly, a situation does not have to be in its training set for it to reason well. It can abstract and consider new situations fluidly. That's not a concern. It's well proven. Certainly, AIs are always on, and they're so close to being free, they're effectively free. In fact, all of the major AIs can be accessed for free, although you pay for extra features and functions. All of the major AIs, I think I'm right saying that, can be accessed for free by people in absolutely every country of the world. You just need an internet connection. And they certainly can infer meaning from subtle, complex, or indirect patterns of speech, ironic comments, hidden meanings, all this good stuff. They're brilliant at it, in fact. They're better than me at all of that. That's no compliment, because I'm not very good with words. So they are very, very good at it. So don't worry about those things. Don't argue with those things. Those things are certainly truths. We can argue about the implications of those things, though. And in my mind, if those things are true, which they are, then I believe AI should, first of all, significantly assist you in doing a better job of helping more patients. And that's the same point that Rob was making. That's the same point that all the academics are making. If these things do help you think more clearly, write more clearly, process more information, then you should be using them, because either you can do more, help more patients better, or you can have more time with your family by doing your work more quickly. So that's your choice, but it should be helping you. We all should embrace it for that use. But I say that's not the focus for today. I believe, point number two, they should also open new ways for people to engage with psychotherapy and to do so more often. Maybe they're already seeing a real life therapist and they get to see a virtual one in addition to complement that. Or maybe they don't have access to a real life therapist and the AI therapist is their only option. Either way, new ways for more people to engage. And by new ways, I mean, it doesn't have to be a traditional therapy session. It could be micro moments. It could be elaboration on the themes from a real life therapy session. It could be reflection on a real life therapy session, or it could be preparation for a real life therapy session. There are so many new ways that AI could play an important role in the therapy process. So new ways for more people to engage with therapy more often. Point number three, I think they also then should help more people to realize they need to see a human therapist because, if it's existential psychotherapy we're interested in, then exploring it with an AI might help you to understand it, fall in love with it, and realize its potential in your life, which might cause them to call one of you and have a deep relationship with a real human being, which started with, or is inspired by, or was enabled in some way by an AI. And I think another great use for them is to give practical, in the moment advice. You're not available 24/7 to your clients, or perhaps some of you are. These things are. And so if they can help people in times of need when they can't get to see you, then that would be a huge benefit to them. I'm going to keep my eye on the comments, by the way, so feel free to ask anything you like as we go through, or challenge me as you go through. I'm very happy to go off on slight tangents and detours. The first question was about access to the slides. Absolutely, yes, I should have said that. I put a link into the chat for now as well. Help yourself. Feel free to skip ahead and prepare a dodgy question about something that's coming up as well. Certainly these things are not perfect. There's no way I'm going to pretend these things are perfect. They are not. There's so many caveats and limitations to them. It doesn't change my big conclusions, but there are. They can't read body language out of the box by default. The underlying models can, by the way. The technology is there. It hasn't been put into a system that's readily available to the public yet. That's a new piece of news since the conference. So the systems now can't read body language, but they will be able to soon. They can't pick up on tone of voice, again, out of the box to the public. I think the back-end models are starting to get that capability. At the moment, again, same challenge, temporary limitation. They can't pick up on other non-verbal cues the way you all do with your clients. And as pointed out by somebody at the conference, there's no silences. They instantly respond every single time. They don't know how to use silence as a tool. But these all, for sure, go in the category of temporary limitations. If that's what's holding you back from embracing it, then you're going to be surprised very soon. So get stuck in now and be ready for these things to change. Jackie asked, who decides what is a cognitive dissonance? In whose opinion? That's a good question, which I'm not qualified to answer. We'll come back onto that later. I think if you're talking about that academic paper I put on screen, I'll defer to the authors of the paper, and I'll give you a link if there wasn't already one. How long until they'll be able to tell tone of voice and body language? Great question. My understanding is that body language is effectively solved with the Google model, which I mentioned earlier, the 1 million token model, which is in beta right now. You can access it if you sign up, but it's not publicly available yet. My understanding is that handles video beautifully and can easily identify from frames of video exactly what's going on. How quickly until it's made publicly available at a low enough cost in an easy enough user interface to effectively solve that problem for the general public? No idea. It could be days, weeks, months, or years, but the underlying technology is solved. So let's expect that will roll out pretty quickly. I think tone of voice, I've not read much about, but my understanding is that won't take very long. So we don't know the answer. Every day we're surprised by new things. These are new capabilities these things have. Literally every single day, I'm excited to open Twitter and see what the new news is of what's publicly available. But yeah, these things for sure are temporary. Don't plan for them. Don't wait for them, but plan for them because they will be coming. And there are some serious problems, though, which are beyond what I would call temporary limitations. Some of these came out of conversations at the conference. This is our new master list. So they're not very good at sticking to rules. You can kind of guide them to behave ethically and kind of guide them to follow rules, but you really can't tell these things what to do. The programmers even can't tell them what to do. You can just guide them. So how good would they be at adhering to codes of ethics? Pretty good, but not perfect. And I think on these things, you have to ask yourself how good we all are at sticking to codes of ethics as well. I suspect they're fall behind a human, but a human is also imperfect. Who is overseeing quality control in the conversations that they have and any advice they give? Nobody is the correct answer to that one, and that's definitely a big worry in this field. Who supervises the AI at a macro level beyond individual conversations to make sure it's ethically behaving in situations like this? Nobody. What is the goal for the AI in therapy? Well, whatever we program in, if we program our own AI, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if a person on the street picks it up and asks it for therapy advice, what goal is it optimizing for? We don't know the answer to that. Not very helpful. They can't truly empathize. There's no actual lived experiences behind these things, no human affirmation. And as I was told so clearly at the conference, that is such an incredibly important part of what it is that you do. And even if these things can give incredible advice, there's still no human connection there. They're still computer programs. And if people use this instead of a real life therapist, that certainly removes a human relationship from their life that they otherwise could have had. That feels damaging to me. Let's take a couple of comments. With most things based on a commercial sense, at what point would AI be the first port of call for medical aid scheme to offer therapy due to the cost? At which point, what is the impact? Great point. So what if the NHS said, hey, to reduce cost, let's roll these things out as a first point of call? What if? Yeah, great question. I'm going to leave that as a rhetorical question, and we come back to it at the end of this. Are you talking about a language model or artificial general intelligence? No, I'm talking purely about, Claire's used the phrase LLM, a large language model. I'm talking purely about large language models or language models like ChatGPT. I'm not anticipating artificial general intelligence. I don't even know how I would define it, in all honesty. I'm saying what we have today and what we have in the very, very near future, like stuff that's in beta now, but not the unknown. There's so much unknown. We don't know what's coming. I'm not planning for that. I'm planning for what's right here in front of us right now. The NHS, I bet they will. No comment on the NHS. But here's what they might do. For the conference, what we did was I talked to a few of you, and we came up with a set of like instructions to give ChatGPT. This is something that's called a custom GPT. You can give a version of ChatGPT your own custom instructions, and it can behave the way you want it to behave. I wrote a set of custom instructions, and I called this therapist GPT, and you can load it up now from that QR code, or I can put the link into the chat. A second. Not that you should be playing with this while I'm talking, but still. Oops. Okay, well, I'll put the link into the chat later because I'm ruining the presentation by trying to click on it. You can play with this later. And I put this out onto the internet. I put the link in 2 or 3 places on the internet. That was it. And so I've not advertised this to anybody. Actually, OpenAI, for some reason I'm not sure of, have decided that the link isn't worthy of going into their GPT store where you can find all the other custom GPTs. I think because it's a therapy bot, I think they're like, oh, that's a bit of a dodgy use case. I'm not going to allow that. So they've delisted it from their store. You can't browse and find it anyway. The only way you can find it is by finding the link on 1 or 2 places that I've posted it online. But it's publicly available if you find the link, or to everybody from the conference. I was going to ask how many clients or how many chats it has done since the conference, but since I incompetently clicked the link, clicked next before I asked the question, you saw the answer. It has now had more, I don't know how many, it just says more than 1,000. So it has seen more than 1,000 clients or done more than 1,000 chats with people since the conference. And so I wonder how many individual chats all of you have had, and whether I have had more therapy chats with clients than all of you individually or all of you combined. I don't know. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I'll let you. Yeah, thank you, Paul. I saw your appropriate shrug. Maybe I should delete this link. I'm very open to that as well. Good God, what have I created? Maybe the NHS should publish it. I don't know. These are things that are possible and we should wrestle with. I think this is ethically programmed. I'll show you. Well, I'll show you the rules behind it, and I'll put them in the links in the chat, obviously. I think this is ethically programmed, but what if somebody published on this unethically programmed? You know, God, what a scary world we're in. I certainly never expected more than 1,000 people to try this. So yeah, these are things that are possible. It performs pretty well and gives pretty useful advice, I'm told, by experts. Obviously, I'm not qualified to judge. And all it took for me to build this was to talk to a few of you, make loads of notes, which is this stuff on this page, and then copy and paste this into ChatGPT, press save, done. That's it. No programming, no coding, no technical knowledge required, just knowledge of what a good therapist might do and how they might behave. And as a first draft, as a rough first draft, it's pretty good. So this is the kind of scary future that we have. OpenAI, the chap who runs OpenAI said these things just before the conference, actually. I want to read them again because I think this is a very, very useful way to think about AI, and I believe everything he said here. So he said, we believe that AI is going to be a technological and societal revolution. I believe it will be a societal revolution. And I believe in the pages running up to this page, you've seen all of the ingredients that will let you draw the same conclusion. He said it will change the world in many ways. I believe it will. It is. It's changed my life in many, many ways. It's rolling out slowly to society, but it's changing the lives of millions and millions of people, with 100 million people using ChatGPT alone, never mind all the other AIs that are out there now. He said it will empower all of you to build so much. And while I'm sure he was talking about tech companies and startups, I think the same is true of all of you, in the same way that with just a few lines of plain English written on this page, I was able to program a therapist to behave the way I wanted it to behave. It's just as easy for all of you to do this in your own way, in your own style, in your own way of being. And so what he said of tech companies, I think is true of all of you and SEA as well. It will empower you to build so much if you choose. If you give people better tools, they can change the world, he said. And this is certainly an incredible tool. Many of you and many others will change the world with it. And every world, the world of therapy as well. He said he believes AI will be about individual empowerment and agency at a scale we've never seen before. That's certainly enlightening and important for us. He believes it will elevate humanity to a scale we've never seen before. And I firmly believe that after 1 year of immersing myself in this technology, not because of the promise and not because some nut job in Silicon Valley said it, but because with my own hands, I've seen it do things that I regard to be amazing in my field. And sitting with experts in other fields, including many of you, I've seen it do things that experts in many fields regard to be exciting according to their expertise. So I really believe that. And he said, artificial intelligence, as it becomes integrated everywhere, means we will all have superpowers on demand. And a great therapist, great advice, great thought partnership or inspiration is, I believe, in the right moment, a superpower on demand. So I think he's absolutely right there. And we ended with some practical steps to embrace and then also to shape the future of AI in your field. This is directly from ChatGPT, with I think with slight editing from me. I asked it advice. Number one, education and training. You could take professional development courses on AI and its applications. And in fact, we could do deep dives and training sessions on that for anyone who's curious. You could participate in pilot programs. We could set those up if you were curious, where we test it with in the wild. We could work with academics to understand its impact and its, as per the comments, also in what way can it be unhelpful, damaging, or clumsy and often need correcting. If you were curious, we could set up and work together on pilot programs. I'm sure we could find a bunch of cool academics who would really love to work with us on that. You could collaborate with technologists who are much smarter than me to code custom versions that obey more rules or follow different disciplines if you wanted to. You could contribute to the discussion, the debate, and the challenge around ethical considerations. You could write papers or published in journals on the challenges as you see it. That would help the conversation to move forward. You could educate your clients about AI tools, the benefits and the limitations. You could advocate for regulations and standards in the use of AI. You could integrate personalized therapy for your clients. You could personalize a version of ChatGPT for each of your clients and have them use one that understands them or their issues or their preferred approach more deeply. You could use AI to help you to track client progress or outcomes, enhancing evidence-based practice, or you could set up or be part of professional networks focused on AI, sharing knowledge and best practices. So this was AI's best guess at how you could all take this further forward, and I quite like its suggestions, actually. But as for AI, incredibly powerful, many ways in which it can be useful, and now I think we should talk a little bit about VR. Let's see the last question first before we move on. How would you envisage large language models being integrated with psychotherapy sessions? For example, would there be therapy sessions in person or remotely online? I mean, I think I will turn that back to you, and I'll say anything is possible. You know, let's say I have a real therapist, then on the way to work on the underground, I could be bouncing ideas off my virtual therapist to help me think about what I'm going to talk about when I get to see you. I could use this, I could speak through my headphones or out loud as I walk and have a real conversation with voice with my therapist, with my virtual therapist here, in before or during, or not during, before or after I see a real life therapist. You could have a virtual therapist in the room with you, helping as an extra perspective. I don't think anybody knows the answer to what the best way is. I don't think anyone knows the answer to what all of the options are. But again, that would be a very fun thing to sit down and think about. Where do you think the gaps are? Where do you think the useful use cases are? Where are the most dangerous use cases that would totally violate ethics? You know, anything is possible. We don't know, and it's for us to help shape it. How come they're free was one of the questions. Well, because that's a good question. I think because the AI companies are trying to win against each other, and so the more free they make them, the more people use them, and the more people use them, the more they learn, and the more they dominate and get a chance to be the winners in that field. So lots of mixed incentives there. But generally speaking, you have light usage for free, and only serious usage you pay for, because they're actually quite expensive to run. Is ChatGPT better than Claude? Yes, ChatGPT is still the best model that's available, although others are getting pretty close. But yeah, ChatGPT's best model is the best model out there still, has been for 13 months. No, hang on, 15 months. I wish I could count. I'm only a mathematician. Susan said she signed up and had a conversation with the AI. The responses are very fast. Yes, and be sure you have the paid version if you want to take this very seriously, because for ChatGPT, the paid version gives you a better model than the free version, and so that's the real one to judge it by. When you pop into therapist ChatGPT and say you're being shouted at by your partner and that you're scared, it suggests several times to face the partner and speak to them. This could go horribly wrong. Yes, it could. Excellent work. I would say that's the flaw of ChatGPT, not therapist GPT, but that is a great example where we could spot that issue, add that to the instructions. And in fact, if that is an issue that the public version does as well, I suspect it does, because that's what it's based on, then that is a great example of where, as professionals, you could call out poor behavior from the model and get some attention and get that fixed. That every day on Twitter, there's people doing exactly this, which is calling out bad behaviors in the models, and the companies learn from it and fix them. So great spot, absolutely great spot. Thank you. I'm glad it's not very public. Wonderful. Yeah, okay, great. So let's take a quick look at VR, and then we can get the presentation off the screen and get into a really deep and thoughtful real life conversation, hopefully. Yeah, VR, I think, is completely different set of issues and challenges to AI, but is another technology which is also going to play, or already is playing, a role in our field and in related fields. At its heart, what VR is some kind of goggle being strapped onto your face. And there's been clumsy versions of that over the last, I think, probably at least 40 years, if not more. You see it in science fiction a lot. And now there's cheap, accessible versions from companies like Meta, like Facebook. And there's quite expensive, but very technologically superior versions from Apple, which didn't exist when we spoke last. So let's assume these things become widely available. Let's assume the price drops massively, and let's assume that large numbers of people can get their hands on these. That's not true now, but it will be true soon. What are some of the use cases? And a couple that really stand out that have been relatively well researched by academics and that seem like useful use cases are phobias and PTSD. The key for both of them really is that with goggles on your face, you're in a safe physical space, but you can be gently, carefully, gradually exposed to something, maybe something you have a phobia for, or maybe something that that caused you trauma and led to PTSD. You can be experience that in a very gradual, very, very, very safe way. Example on the left might be if you have a fear of heights, you might go closer and closer to the edge of, I don't know, a relatively small building to start with, and then as that gets more and more comfortable, maybe a bigger and bigger building, and you know, you can push a button or wave your hand and everything goes away and you're back in a field of lovely grass and trees. I don't know how these things would work. But patients can manage anxiety levels, ramp it up if they see fit, step back whenever they do, and learn to develop coping mechanisms while knowing that they're in a safe space. This has been used successfully in treating phobias such as fear of flying, fear of heights, certain situations, public speaking, things like that are apparently showing promising results. And I put a link to, I think that was an article that I read on some of those topics. And then PTSD, similar really, but the immersive nature of virtual reality allows a much more intense and more realistic re-experiencing of the event or of related events to those which caused you trauma, which, and it emphasized in these papers, under professional guidance, could help patients work through their traumas. And there are some studies showing success rates of 60-70%, or between 66 and 90% when used to enhance CBT. And I put a link in there to, I think that was another article that kind of seemed like it gave a really thoughtful and good overview of that. So both of them feel like they're in relatively early stages of development and rollout and testing, but I think we can already imagine ways in which both of those could be useful. And I love that particularly the one on the right emphasized very much so that it's alongside and with a professional, not instead of. Well, you could totally imagine these apps being available at home and some people taking their own journeys there if the app was sufficiently supportive. And VR therapy has many advantages. I mean, first, you can control the exposure. So a therapist or the patient even could control the environment, the level of exposure, and the therapy could be tailored to the specific needs and the actual progress of the patient. Safety and privacy, of course, because patients know they can remove the headset at absolutely any moment. And that might make them feel safer about confronting these challenges. If there's a bloody great spider in front of you, you know, it's a little bit hard to picture yourself running away, maybe. But if you know you can just put your left hand in the air and the spider literally disappears and is replaced by a bar of chocolate or something wonderful and loving, then, you know, maybe that's an improvement. VR technology can be highly realistic. And this is where we need technology to advance. The Apple headset, while very expensive, is much more realistic than anything else. So let's imagine a wave of ultra realism coming. And therefore, we can imagine that being more effective than some of the clunky old technologies we might have seen. Data and feedback is the other big benefit, right? VR systems can track precise progress, eye movements. You could imagine heart rate being integrated into it. Well, I guess it already is if you have your Apple Watch connected. You could do ECG measurements while you look at the spider. And it could track immediate progress, give immediate feedback, and adjust the therapy in real time using eye movement or body movements. So lots of lovely advantages, which you could imagine being integrated again into the Apple Watch and the Apple headset tomorrow, should they choose. But also, found a really interesting study which used VR and this one insight to create this, what I thought was a very novel form of therapy. So there's a thing apparently called Solomon's paradox, where people give better advice to other people than they do to themselves, or they're better able to they're not able to follow their own advice or something like that. I definitely noticed this to myself. I'm very, very good at giving advice, but I need it myself. I really do. And so a bunch of academics spotted this opportunity and did an experiment. It's quite old now. This is 2018, 2019, although there have been updates to it since then. And they used it for virtual reality counseling. So for each person, they created an avatar of the person, and then the person would sit in virtual reality. There you've got goggles and headphones and controllers, and they would first they would talk and offer themselves advice, and then they would sit back, and it was as though Sigmund Freud was sat next to them giving them advice, but it was them giving themselves advice. And it showed that giving yourself advice, as you can do in this virtual reality environment after a couple of sessions, significantly enhanced participants' perception of change in their behavior and their perceptions of help coming from that advice versus just scripted advice or other forms of advice. So we have a problem helping ourselves, but actually maybe VR can help people to help themselves. That's another interesting angle, we might not have expected. So, bunch of ways in which VR already has been used. I would say for both VR and AI, we're at the absolute tip of the iceberg, early stages. The future is completely uncertain, except for the fact that pretty soon I think we'll be in a world where everybody has AI at their fingertips. As you could argue, we do now. It's free on anyone's phone. But imagine a world where everybody has a VR headset lying around. They're so cheap, we all have them with our phones, or maybe our neighbor does, or down the street we do, but we have access to them. Imagine a world where everybody has access to AI and VR, remembering that the technology as it exists today is the worst it will ever be. It will only get better. And I would urge you, and again, the key point of this, I think, is to think about what you will do as a result of this. How will you behave differently, having imagined this? I would suggest embarking on a journey, as all things in life are. And I think a very helpful place to start the journey is skepticism and hesitation. We have had so many wild promises of technology in movies and TV and news and technology companies hyping it. We have had so much hype that hesitation and skepticism is a very, very, very good place to start. But I would urge playful exploration of these technologies, not diving in and trying to use it in your job, but playful exploration. Try these AIs, find the flaws like you did, thank you, but find the benefits as well. What does it do well? And learn how these things can be useful and interesting. Just play, have fun, get yourself a VR headset, try the Sigmund Freud Coach Yourself app, and which is not publicly available, by the way, but my friend has said that he's worked with the academics on this, and they can make it available to anybody who needs it. Then if you play, and playful exploration, if you play, you will find practical applications. It might be helping you to read journal articles. It might be helping you to remember professional concepts. It might be helping you plan your schedule or your day or your week, or it might be therapeutic help. But if you play, and just play, if you play, you will find practical applications. There are so many. And then, I think only then, you will begin to understand these technologies' power. with the best will in the world, me showing you these things working or telling you that other people have found these things helpful will maybe encourage you to play, maybe help you to find practical applications, but will not convince you. You have to play yourself to understand these things and their power. So that's step 4, understanding its power. And then I would hope that people in this group or in the SEA more broadly, or in the therapy community more broadly, I would hope somebody will help to shape and harness the power of these things, to list all the ways in which they're dangerous and risky and challenging, and also list all the ways they are very, very helpful, and help these tech companies, help startups, help entrepreneurs, help academics, help the NHS and other governing bodies in that sit around and above our field, help them to embrace these technologies wisely, to develop these technologies widely, and to help them to responsibly help as many people as possible. They will be helping people. They already are helping people. People are going beyond the real world in their need and their want and their delivery of therapy. And the more we can help shape that and keep it safe and responsible, the better more people will be.